Hey everyone, and welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going deep
Oh,
into the mind of a guy, right, named Brás Cubas. He's a fictional character, but
yeah.
brought to life by this Brazilian author Machado de Assis in his novel, The Posthumous Memoirs of Brás Cubas.
Ah, yes. That title is not
I know, right?
just for show.
Yeah.
It's really not.
Not at all.
We're getting the story from beyond the grave. He's narrating his entire life after death,
Literally.
which already gives us a clue
Yeah.
about the kind of cynical and satirical tone
Oh, yeah, for sure.
we're in for.
So today we're aiming to really understand Brás Cubas as a man, what made him tick, what were his ambitions, what were his failures, and ultimately, what can we glean from this incredibly unique perspective on life and death that he has from well-being dead.
Right.
And to do that, we'll be pulling directly from the novel's pages to really kind of highlight those moments that really stick with you.
Yeah, we want to unpack not only the events of his life,
Yeah.
but also how Machado de Assis uses this unusual narration to comment on society, love, ambition, and even the meaning of life itself.
I mean, this is big stuff.
Big stuff, yeah.
So let's begin with Brás's death. I mean, it's literally the first thing he tells us, right?
Yeah.
He died at 2 p.m. on a Friday in August of 1869 from pneumonia at his country house.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
Right? If you know Machado de Assis,
Yeah.
you know straightforward is never really his style.
Yeah, no, this is not that kind of party.
Not at all. And Brás, being a true product of his creator, claims that pneumonia wasn't the only
That
thing
wasn't the only thing.
responsible for his death.
Okay, so what else is there?
He also blames an idea. He was working on a grand invention
An invention.
that he never got to finish.
That's so interesting.
I know, which already introduces us to a key element of the novel, irony. Even in death, Brás is still preoccupied with ambition and legacy.
Wow, that's a really good point.
It makes you wonder, what were those ambitions?
Yeah.
What kind of life led him to this point?
Let's rewind a bit. Okay.
Let's talk about the beautiful Marcella.
Okay.
And those are Brás's words. Like, he was totally infatuated with this captivating Spanish woman.
Yeah, Marcella represents one of the novel's major themes. The allure of fleeting beauty and the disillusionment that comes with chasing romantic ideals.
That's rough. I mean, especially after death.
Right.
Right, to have to deal with that. He even admits to showering her with expensive gifts, going into debt just to satisfy her desires.
Which speaks to Brás's character, doesn't it?
What's that?
Impulsive, driven by passion, perhaps a bit naive.
A little bit, maybe. So love wasn't exactly smooth sailing for Brás. But what about his career? Did he find success in other areas of his life?
Brás actually tried his hand at politics.
Politics, okay.
It's something his father really pushed for, hoping for that prestigious public recognition for his son.
It's interesting how, societal pressure plays such a role even in a story narrated from beyond the grave.
Absolutely. And Brás tries to play the game, but his ambitions are constantly being thwarted. Lobo Neves.
Yeah.
This rival
Yeah.
always seems to be one step ahead.
It's almost like Brás is destined to be a runner-up. Like, he even loses his seat in the Chamber of Deputies,
Yeah.
which he mentioned so casually, like it was just another Tuesday.
Right.
But I imagine it must have been a blow to his ego.
Definitely. And these failures kind of paint a picture of a man who, despite his privilege and opportunities, never quite achieves the recognition he craves.
He even calls himself a failure. But is that just Brás being self-deprecating, or is there a deeper layer of irony there? Is he actually questioning the very idea of success from his unique vantage point?
It's a question worth considering, and it speaks to Machado de Assis' genius in using Brás's voice to make us question our own assumptions about ambition and what truly constitutes a fulfilling life.
Right, so love was messy, career ambitions went unfulfilled. Are we starting to see Brás Cubas's philosophy on life emerge here? I mean, narrating your memoirs from the afterlife. It has to give you a rather unique perspective.
Without a doubt.
Wouldn't you say?
And to really understand that philosophy, we need to bring in another key character,
Okay.
Quincas Borba.
Ah, yes, Quincas Borba, Brás's childhood friend, who he encounters years later, impoverished and struggling with what seems to be mental illness. It's a pretty jarring reunion.
It is. Their encounter is pivotal. Quincas Borba represents the harsher realities of life, realities that Brás, in his privileged bubble, may have conveniently overlooked.
Right. And then, of course, there's a little detail that Quincas Borba steals Brás's watch.
Right.
Adding insult to injury.
Adding insult to injury. It's almost like the symbolic kick in the pants to Brás's sense of complacency,
Okay, so we have a heartbroken, disillusioned Brás running into his impoverished former friend, who then proceeds to steal from him. Is this a turning point for Brás's outlook on life? What's going on in his head?
Well, to understand that, we need to explore Quincus Borba's
Right.
rather interesting philosophical theory.
Okay.
He calls it humanitism.
Humanitism. Okay, tell me more about that.
It is essentially humanism boils down to the idea that life is a constant. Struggle for survival, it's a competition. And the strong devour the weak.
That's pretty grim.
Mm-hmm.
And how does Brás react to this? Does he buy into this whole dog-eat-dog philosophy?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting.
So last we left off, Brás is grappling with this brutal idea of humanitism, this concept that life is a constant struggle for survival, where the strong prey on the weak.
Yeah, it's not a very cheery outlook.
Not exactly sunshine and rainbows.
But Machado de Assis was a master at exposing the darker aspects of human nature, and humanitism becomes this lens through which Brás starts to view the world.
Right, and it's not just an abstract idea. He actually sees it play out in a really visceral way. When he and Quincus Borba witness a dogfight.
That's right. Two dogs viciously fighting over this bone.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't even have any meat left on it. It's a really powerful image. Like, what was Brás's takeaway from that? Was he horrified? Did he see himself in those dogs?
He saw it as a representation of the futility of human ambition, We're all scrambling for scraps, fighting over things that offer no real sustenance.
So we're getting a sense that Brás is becoming disillusioned with the world. He's seeing the emptiness of material pursuits, the ruthlessness of ambition. But where does this leave him? Does he just give up? Become a hermit?
Well, it's interesting because even as Brás is internalizing this bleak view of humanitism, he still talks about wanting to help Quincus Borba. He calls it regenerating him.
Regenerating him.
Okay.
But is that genuine compassion? Or is Brás just trying to prove something to himself, maybe overcompensating for his own growing cynicism?
It's hard to say. For sure with Brás, he's a master of self-deception, always justifying his actions, even the less than noble ones.
Okay, which brings us to Virgilia.
Yes.
The other big love story in Brás's life. And this one gets complicated.
Very complicated. Remember, Virgilia is married. And not just to anyone, but to Lobo Neves.
Oh, no.
Brás's political rival. Talk about a love triangle.
Wow, so Brás is pursuing a woman who's already married to the guy who seems to be winning at everything. Career, social status, you name it. It's almost like Brás is setting himself up for more heartbreak.
Maybe. Or maybe it's about something else entirely. Is Brás truly in love with Virgilia? Or is this just another competition with Lobo Neves? Another way to prove himself.
Well, Brás certainly goes to great lengths to win Virgilia over. They eventually set up a secret love nest.
Right.
And Donna Placida, Virgilia's former maid, gets caught in the crossfire.
Donna Placida is an interesting character, isn't she? She's clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation, but feels obligated to help Virgilia.
Yeah?
She's almost a tragic figure, caught between loyalty and her own sense of morality.
And how does Brás rationalize using Donna Placida to facilitate his affair?
Well, in typical Brás fashion, he twists it into a bizarre act of charity.
An act of charity, really?
He claims his vice is the fertilizer for her virtue, meaning his affair, allows Donna Placida to avoid poverty in her old age.
That's pretty cold-hearted.
It is. And again, it reveals so much about Brás's warped worldview. He's always finding ways to justify his actions, even when those actions are clearly selfish.
Exactly. He sees the hypocrisy of the world, but he's also participating in it. He's this fascinating mix of self-awareness and self-deception. So we have Brás heartbroken by Marcella, failing in his political aspirations, embracing this bleak humanitism philosophy, and engaging in an affair with his rival's wife. Is there any hope for this guy? Does he ever find any sense of redemption?
Well, as Brás gets older, and as we get closer to the end of his memoirs, he starts to reflect on his life in a more introspective, even existential way.
Here's where it gets really interesting. He's facing his own mortality, and it's not a pretty picture.
Right, he's grappling with the fear of oblivion, the idea that everything he's done, everything he's experienced, will eventually be forgotten.
And it's not just a passing thought. He actually encounters oblivion as a character, this terrifying figure who waits to consume us all.
It's a chilling image, and it forces us as readers to confront our own feels about death and what we leave behind.
So how does Brás react to this? Does this existential dread change him in any way? Does he find a way to make peace with it?
That, my friend, is a question we'll have to explore in the final chapter of Brás Cubas's life after death.
All right, so we're back, and things are getting pretty heavy. In the world of Brás Cubas,
Yeah.
we left off with him facing the reality
Right.
of his own mortality, haunted by this image of oblivion, this
Well,
terrifying figure ready to just erase his memory and legacy.
from existence.
And this awareness, this brush with the idea of nothingness, seems to trigger a shift in Brás's behavior.
Okay. So he's already lost the love of his life, Marcella. His political career is a mess. He's grappling with the futility of it all. What does a man with nothing left to lose do?
Right.
Does he become a monk? Devote himself to charity?
Not exactly Brás ever the cynic. Retreats further into himself.
Okay. So what does that look like?
Well, he talks about catching flies with his eyes.
Catching flies with his eyes. I love that.
Just spending his days lost in thought, reminiscing about the past.
So almost like a melancholic paralysis. Has he just given up? Not necessarily even in his withdrawal. He's still observing, analyzing, dissecting the world around him. He rereads old letters, tries to make sense of his past choices.
He even encourages readers to say their letters from their youth, calling it the philosophy of old leaves.
Yeah.
What's he getting at there?
I think it's a poignant observation. You know, those old letters are like tangible connections to our past selves. They remind us of who we were, the hopes and dreams we held, the heartbreaks we endured. It's like looking into a mirror. That reflects a version of ourselves we may have forgotten.
Okay, but Brás's introspection isn't always so sentimental. Remember his reaction to the death of his uncle and cousin?
Right. Not exactly what you would call a heartfelt outpouring of grief.
No, not really.
He talks about taking them to the cemetery with the same nonchalance as one would take letters to the post office.
That's so strange. It's shockingly detached.
Yeah, and it's a stark contrast to Virgilia's reaction to the death of her husband, Lomo Neves. Remember, Brás describes her as consumed by grief?
And soon.
Yeah. But even Virgilia's grief is called into question, isn't it? Brás hints that it's all an act, a performance for the public eye.
He does say that.
Yeah.
He observes that Virgilia betrayed her husband
Yeah.
with sincerity
And
and now mourns him with the same sincerity.
it's a cynical observation,
Yeah.
but also a deeply insightful one.
Which leads him to one of his most memorable lines.
Yes.
The tax of grief is like Vespasian's coin.
Yeah.
It doesn't smell of its origin and is gathered as much from evil as from good.
Wow.
So even in his final reflections, Brás is challenging our assumptions about human emotion.
Right. He's saying that grief, whether genuine or feigned, is ultimately just another transaction.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's a reminder that we can never truly know what's going on in another person's heart.
that's true.
So Brás, this man who considered himself a failure in life, becomes this razor-sharp observer of human nature and death.
Absolutely, and that's what makes him such a compelling character. He may not have achieved conventional success, but his posthumous memoirs offer us this unique and often uncomfortable perspective on the world and our place in it.
He really does leave us with more questions than answers. But maybe that's the point.
Maybe there were no easy answers.
I think Machado de Assis wanted us to walk away from this story with a sense of unease, to question our own values, our own aspirations.
What do we consider a life well lived? What legacy do we want to leave behind?
Brás Cubas may be a fictional creation, but his voice continues to resonate, challenging us to think critically about the world and our place in it.
Well said.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of Brás Cubas. We hope you enjoyed this journey into the mind of one of literature's most unforgettable characters. And remember, there's always more to explore in the pages of the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time.